Hello everybody, welcome back to Blue Cat Art. So today we're doing this amazing, beautiful, upside down leopard who's got some, I mean look at that, how could you not want to do that? This puss cat is amazing, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful. Today we're going to do the eyes. So, in fact, as you can see, I've got quite a lot of detail in these eyes, so we're going to have lots and lots of fun doing them. I always print my stuff off so I can do the background, but I like to work off a tablet or computer screen. It's so much easier. You can zoom in and zoom out and you can get all the details that you need so quickly and so easily, and more vibrant than a printout. So we're going to be working from my tablet today. I'm going to put it on the side so you can't always see the colours, I'm afraid. I keep moving the camera, it just confuses me trying to get it back into a place where you can actually see what I'm doing. So we have our outline. Underneath we have some foam, so we're going to be foaming onto that. I have chosen a palette of colours, as you can see there. So to start off with, we have a grey white. It's just slightly off white. We've got a silky black, a selection of greens, a silk white, a nice terracotta, a darker one, and a couple of nice vibrant yellows. And that's the palette I've chosen. I can guarantee I will probably start looking and think I haven't got the colour I want on my palette, but we shall see. We'll see how that works. So for now I'm using 2 needles, a shaping needle and a fine needle. I don't tend to use much else. I find them far easier to work with. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of my black. Now this silk black is really, it's got a deep shine to it that you may not be able to see on the camera, but if you've worked with silk silk fibers, they're very, very fine and very, very soft. And I'm using the shaping needle at the moment, which is the thicker one, as I just want to fill in the pupil, and it's only rough. We're not in fact I'm going to change to the finer needle because it's a bit easier with the silk fibers. And we're just going to spin it round so we can gather them all up. There we go. And although you can't really see very well, we will go back to it, but that's the start. We've got the pupil in, so put the rest of the fibers away. Now I'm going to start off with this off-white, and it's just got a hint of blue in it, so it's almost quite grey. And I'm just gonna swap back to my thicker needle. I'm just going to put a fine base layer in, so I'm not worrying about being overly neat. The other colours that will go on top will have this as a layer coming through from underneath. Now I work with small amount of thread at a time, wool at a time, because I find it easier to control and get it to where I want it to be. And then I end up with my hands full. There we go. Now the white is mainly on the top of the eye. or the top of the eye as we're looking at it, should I say. So all the comments will be as we are looking at it. Otherwise, we will get very, very confused later on. So as we are looking at it, this is the top of the eye. And I don't want it too thick. As you can see, I've got a little bit there. Just fluff it out, because you don't want big chunks of wool either. So I hope not too many of you are panicking over this lockdown that we've been put back into. It does give you, hopefully, more time to do your arts and crafts and enjoy relaxing. But do, as I say, I mean, my partner's a paramedic, and they are rushed off their feet with COVID cases. So, you know, please just stay indoors if you can. Don't go out. Just keep everybody safe, including yourself. Okay, so I'm going to bring that round a little bit more around here. And I will probably go over this this white with the silk fibres later. But for now, I just want just a bit of a background. Oh, excuse me a minute, the dog's come back in. Come on then, up you come. Up. Good girl. My little frog, she likes to be in the art room with me. And there's a box underneath my table that has a fluffy bed on it. And that's her favourite space, because it's just within arm reach of Mummy. So if she wants a cuddle, she just puts her head on my knee. Bless her. Okay. Right, now don't worry about it sticking to the foam, especially if you're using a linen like I am here, because it will come off without without creasing or pulling the fabric too much. If you're working off a felt fabric, then you've got to be careful, but not so much with the linen. So we've got our white base in, and all the way around the edge we've got a nice light yellow, so I'm going to use this one. Now these are very short, coarse fibres, so these will be very easier to felt than that white. The shorter and the coarser, I have found, are the easier to felt, but they're also easier to get big lumps and bumps in. So using small amounts at a time is still better. So as you can see, it doesn't take much to put these fibres in. I do like working with the coarser fibres because they're quicker and they're easier to work with. The really fine silky fibres can be quite difficult to manoeuvre and work around. Okay. Now my drawing actually has made the eyeball quite big, and it's not actually as big as it looks. There we go. I think I'm going to swap back to the finer one, because it can be a little bit easier when you're working in small places to use a finer needle. I'm only going to go that far because this area here on my picture is a lot darker, so there's no point in wasting a wool. There we go. you see, by having the white underneath, and it doesn't matter too much if you're working on a light fabric, but if you're working on a black fabric, you don't want the black underneath your colour. So by having the white underneath, it gives you that bit of base colour, so you don't have bits of black coming through. Because at the end of the day, we are 2D felting, and we don't want big, chunky wool on the linen. And I found by doing it this way as well, because we're not creating such a rise of wool, we can just put them in a normal standard frame. We don't need the big 3D frames. They will just go in a normal frame, so it's much easier. So less is more. We've had this conversation, I'm sure. Less is more. So we're getting that nice yellow, and I've gone a bit too much over with the yellow, but I'm not going to worry too much at the moment. I'm going to bring this round, and I'm still using the fine needle, which is, I don't tend to, I don't know how many needles there are in a full set of needles, but I tend to only use 3. I use this fine one. As you can see, it's so much easier just when you're grabbing these single fibres to poke them in. And also you don't get so many holes. If the finer the needle, the less the hole. So I use this fine one most of the time, to be honest. It's my go-to needle. And it's the finest one I've got and can get. So yeah, this is my go-to needle. I had to quickly put you on pause then, because my other dog was heaving up. Not very pleasant. I don't really want to hear that on the video. So, my partner's taking him out in the garden. So I can only apologise for that, but that's what they do. That's nature. So as you can see, I don't have any white underneath this bit of yellow, but I'm going to put white over the top of this, so I've just got the hint of yellow coming through from underneath, because on this side here of the eye, it is very, very light yellow, and I don't have a very, very light yellow. So instead, I'm going to put the yellow on first. This is the lightest one I have currently. And then I will put the white over the top, which will then hopefully, if I don't put too much white and just put enough, it will still look yellow, but a lot lighter. Okay. There we go. All right. Now for some nice colour. So this bit of the eye has more colour than anything else. So I'm going to go in first with this big, lovely, strong, vivid yellow. That's it. Catch all the fibres together. And it does look, really does stand out, which it won't do so much by the time we've finished. There goes the other dog. It's like Piccadilly Circus. That's it. I'm just going to take this round. I'm going to pull these fibres and just pull them round to the edge a little bit. It doesn't have to be 100% tidy at this stage. As you can see, I've gone over the pupil a bit with the fibres, but that'll all get tidied up towards the end. And you can see I'm just dragging these fibres round and back in. Oh, you're back again, are you, Pup? Come on then, back up in your bed. Good girl. Try not to knock me palette of colours over. There we go. In and out like. There we go. Okay, so we've got this nice, and I'm just going to flatten it down a bit, because obviously now we're going to start on our second layer of colour. Okay. Now I have quite a bit of green in this corner bit. I've chosen 3 different greens, but I'm going to go for just a nice green that's got a hint of yellow to it. Now I'm literally just using tiny fibres, because at this stage I don't want it to look like it's a big patch of colour. So I'm just putting just a tiny bit in, and as we go round it will slowly start changing colour. And again, I'm not being too tidy with it, firstly because the eyes are like folds of colour. If you look really closely at any eye, whether it's human or animal, they're like little shards of colour. So I want it to look as natural as I can possibly get it. And hopefully you can see that it's slowly changing colour. I've got quite a bit of green on this side. There we go. And as you can see, I'm spinning the needle round because it catches the fibres on the little bits that stick out. Can't think of the name of them off the top of my head, but it'll come to me in a minute. So by twizzling it around, it'll catch those few fibres. There we go. And the pupil's off centre, which I've left far too much room for the pupil there. There's a little bit more green, too much. And I never get it right first time, so I can end up fettling and poking at this throughout the whole of the felting, and I'll look at it and I'll needed a bit more yellow here, or it needed a bit more terracotta, or so, you know, it's a good trick to constantly keep looking at bits that you've already done and looking to see if they're in comparison to the rest of your felt. That didn't come out very well at all, did it? I can't think of the word I'm looking for. I'm a bit tongue-tied today, I'm afraid. Sympathetic. They need to be sympathetic. The whole thing needs to glue together, so to speak. So you don't want one bit looking really bright and the other bit looking dull and cold. So I always spend a lot of time re-looking at the bits I've already done and seeing if I can improve them or add a bit more light or a bit more dark or a bit more vibrancy. So you can guarantee the eye will change a little bit as we go along. Okay, so I think I've done enough of that bit of green. I just want to put in this bit of terracotta. Now I'm choosing the lighter one of the two, and again just tiny fibres, and it's just on this bottom bit of the eye here. Like I said earlier, it's the bottom as we're looking at it. There we go. Now I've got a bit too much there, so rather than keep poking at it, I'm going to gather them up in my hand and just snip it. And always put the fibres that you've taken off back, either in your palette or back on in the box, because there's no point in wasting wool, so we keep them together. Okay, now I'm going to just pause you a second. Said I would. I need a couple of colours that I haven't got, so hold on. Okay, so I'm back again. So I've got the basic colours. I've still got more to add, but I just want to add a few colours around the edges just to visually keep it together a little bit for me. Now I didn't have a nice brown, nice light chestnut brown, which actually goes in here. It's always the way. I end up putting loads of colours down on my palette that I think I'm going to use, and there's always some that I don't have and some that I don't use. So the palette that I'm using is just a pencil box lid, that's got a bit of foam inside it, so the walls doesn't stick to it, but it doesn't slide around as if it was on a bit of paper. It stays nicely where you put it, and I find it's quite useful, as I know a lot of you felters work flat, and I'm working on my drawing easel, which is very upright, and I find for me that is so much easier, because if you're working flat, what you tend to do is you're bending your spine and your head is bending as well, and you end up with a very sore back and a very sore neck, and it's not very pleasant. And the more you do it, your shoulder starts aching, your back starts aching, you end up with all sorts of aches and pains. So if you can, try working upright like this. It is so much easier on your body. So much easier, and you're not crunched up looking at something. So now I'm going to come in with the black. Now this isn't the same as the one I used in the pupil. This is just a standard, what I call a black, so there's no hint of blue or no hint of brown. Not very often you get a black, but it's a black. So, and I've literally just got just a fine piece here, and I'm just going to go round the edge of the eye. This is the black that will frame it. Sometimes you have to double the fibre. There we go. Okay, now it's a bit difficult to see because obviously I'm working on black linen, but it will stand out eventually and make life easier. It will show up once you've got all the other colours of the fur in. So I'm based down in London, and at the moment we're having horrible rain and wind. So I'm actually quite grateful to be in the warm, doing a bit of felting, rather than being out in horrible, horrible, horrible weather. So I'm going to go all the way around the edge with this. And again, if you end up with stray fibres like this, just use your finger, pull them down and tuck them in. We'll probably put another layer of black later on over the top of this one. But for now, it's giving you a visual frame for your eye and helping to see where everything should be. Okay. I end up with these. There's always at least 1 or 2 fibres that will just stick up in the air, and no matter what you do, you don't seem to be able to get them to go down. But we get there in the end. Okay, I'm just going to hold that back on itself. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to lift these black fibres that are straying over the eye itself. This is where glasses always come in handy. I couldn't see a thing without my glasses, but glasses do help magnify things a little bit. So you just want to pull these stray black hairs out of your way. Okay. So we've done the black around the edge. I want to go back in with that brown that I had just now. The only problem with putting your colours to one side, and if you're wearing sleeves, is your sleeves quite often pull the colour off the palette. So I've come back in with me brown. I've got a tiny little bit here, and I'm just separating that into literally probably about 2 or 3 hairs. And I just want to put in and hold it down with my finger, just a little line, because we want this to be as realistic as we can get it. And again, if you have too much, just grab hold of the fibres if you can, give them a snip. I think I've still got enough that I've just snipped off to put in another line here. Now we're going from the pupil to the exterior. I'm just pushing those fibres back again. The trouble with felting, the one thing I find a little frustrating is you're constantly pushing in fibres that you're not necessarily working with at that particular moment. So I'm going to go in for a little bit more brown. Now I've twisted this a bit, if you can see, just twisted it round, because I want to put in a bit that goes round. Hopefully you can see. There we go. Now you are going to have holes in this for the moment, but hopefully we can just stroke them out. Okay, so I don't want to put too much brown in there. I'm going to go in to my greens again and just get the darker of the greens that I've picked out, fighting with the fibres. And it's doesn't look that dark, but it is darker than the one we used just now. And I just want to put a little bit, oops, too much, a little bit over here. There we go. And to be honest, it's all about just keep playing with the colours until you get the look that you want, or the look that you're after. You just keep adding colour over colour. This is why we use tiny amounts, because I'm just going to pull this away a little bit from the things. Just put my hand underneath it and give it a little. Doesn't want. There we go. That's why I only use tiny little bits, because otherwise we'd end up with an eye that's really going to stick out, and that's the last thing we want, is big sticky out gluey eyes. Okay, just tidying up the edges a bit. I'm going to go back to that pupil and put another layer on it. Now again with this lovely shiny, I don't know if you can see how shiny that is, but it's real silky fibres, so they're quite difficult to work with, but the black ones seem to be easier to work with than the white ones. Might this come from a different style of sheep, I don't know. Oops, and I've just pulled it out. I've not put it in enough and I've just pulled it out. There we go. Let's try that again, shall we? There we go. Okay. So, and rather than just doing it big in one go and then having to work around it, I just like to do a little bit at a time, because then I can say, well, it doesn't need any more height, doesn't need to stand out anymore, or it's easier for me that way. Okay, so we've got quite a bit of colour down the bottom of this eye, and I can see round the edge of the top of the eye as we're looking at it, it has a very yellowy greeny colour. So I've got, it almost looks like sand on the screen, but it does have a hint of yellow and a hint of green in it, and it's not very easy to show that on the camera, I'm afraid. But I'm just going to go around the top edge, right around the edge bit of it, just with this colour. So as you can see, we know we've got the white and then the yellow, and then we're just going along with this almost sand looking colour. You always get the stray fibres. There we go. And then I'm also going to just take a hint of the brown that I used at the bottom of the eye, and just stick a little bit of that in as well. I literally just want this right round the edge to just poke through. So some of it I'm hiding underneath the black, just because it's easier. Give that a bit of a brush with a needle, because it's gone a bit blocky, and I don't want blocky colour. I want it all to blend together. Okay, I'm not going to go much further with this, just a tiny bit. I'm going to chop that bit off. Don't want that bit. Okay. just poke these fibres in. Sometimes you need to just spend a couple of minutes going over the whole piece that you're doing and just brushing it. So you're pulling the fibres out again, but you're not pulling them out. You're just ruffling them a bit and then poking them back down again. And doing that, just going across the top slowly, it does get rid of the holes that are created and gives it more of a blended look. Okay, now I've got a little bit of grey in this bottom corner, so I didn't put grey on there, but I do have some behind me, which is quite useful. So it probably looks white to you, but it is actually grey. A very, very light grey, but it is grey. I'm only taking just a tiny piece, tiny, which is probably too much. I have to cut some off. And I'm just putting that on this edge here. There we go. Get my scissors. Where did I put my scissors? There we go. Put things down, can't find them again. These nail scissors, I love these nail scissors. They're absolutely amazing. Because they're concaved as well, it's very easy to use them for felting. Concaved means that they're slightly bent, as you can see there. So they're easy to use. Right, let's have a look. Let's just tuck these fibres in here. Okay, I think I need to bring some more colour down to this bit here, because it's not actually black. So I'm going to go back in with the first colour we used, the really light yellow, and I'm just going to go round the pupil a little bit more, because the pupil isn't dead centre. It actually sits further down as we're looking at it. So I'm just going to go in around the pupil a bit more. There we go. Now, that would have probably been easier to do this from the beginning, but none of us are perfect. And, you know, there isn't a right and a wrong way of doing anything. There's your way. And if your way happens to be similar to my way, then it'll be quite handy for you, because you can see how I do it. But you can give 10 felters the same piece to do, and you can guarantee they'll probably all do it differently. So these tutorials are not to teach you necessarily how the right and wrong way to do things. They're to teach you my way of doing things. And, you know, you might think, oh, that doesn't work for me, and that's absolutely fine. You've got to do what works for you. But if you've been struggling on a little bit for a long time, and you see how I do it, and you think, oh, why didn't I do it like that? Because that would have been so much easier. So hopefully that's what these videos are intended for, is to help you if they can. And also, a lot of people, I post on quite a few different art sites, and I'll post the finished picture, and people will go, what's needle felting? And then I have to say, well, it's a process of trying not to stab your finger most of the time. But if you're 2D felting, you don't have to worry about that one, which is I'm quite glad at. I did do a little bit of 3D felting, and I did end up with very, very, very sore fingers, and not very successful felts either. I felt I wasn't cut out for 3D felting, and because I'm a pencil artist as well, I think it was just very natural for me